مرحبا, I'm Monolith. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel. I'm really excited to show you some of my recording and mixing techniques that I use to get my tracks ready for release. My last project was an album called Ambiguous, which was released on Awesome Soundwave. To check it out, just head to the link description below. I've been working in the music industry for over 15 years. I started off as an audio engineer and music producer. Then I took an interest in creating music myself, so I decided to make some electronic dance music. And then from there, I also trained as a contemporary classical composer. So I really do enjoy to score music as well. So who's Monolith? Well, Monolith is a ambient / techno persona where I use contemporary electronic music techniques and combine them with other traditional practices. Predominantly, I'm an improviser whilst I'm performing. It's rare that you'll ever see Monolith play the same music at each show. I bring this improvisation into the studio as well, where I bring different instruments, develop different musical sequences, pressing play, and then seeing what happens. For the recording of this track, that is exactly what I did. So let me show you. My preferred DAW is Pro Tools. The reason being is because I used Pro Tools when I first started in the industry. It is the industry standard. I've used it in many studios, and it's just never failed me really. I've been using Pro Tools pretty much full time for the last 6 years. I don't just use it as my recorder, but I also tend to play around with MIDI sequencing as well out of Pro Tools. For the purposes of this track, all I've done is that I've plugged in a various amount of instruments and then pressed record and then started playing around with it. I'm an improviser, so if I've got an idea and I want something to go, I'll just use that element and record it in. We have the instruments that are connected. So here I got a rhythm. So I've utilized the rhythm's individual outputs. So I've routed out the kick, some toms, some mid toms as well, and the main outputs of the rhythm as well. For this track, it's actually the hi-hats. Then I have the Mother 32, and then I've got my TR8. The reason why I love using it is because it has faders on it, and I can control what can come in and out as I'm performing or as I'm recording. So for the purpose of this record, I've pretty much used the cymbal, also got hi-hats out as well. That does really depend whether I want to really concentrate on the closed hi-hats or the open hi-hats. And then I've got the main outputs of the TR8 going in here. So as you can see here, I've got these set up as mono channels and then the stereo channel of the TR8 here. And it's the same thing with the rhythm. So I've got individual channels here that are mono, and then I've got the main output as a stereo channel. Also, the Mother 32 is a mono synth, so it's all gonna come in as mono. And then I have a modular channel here. So pretty much my modular channel is all the sounds that I've created on my modular synth, and then just patched it in and just recorded it through. I also use an Octatrack as well. The Octatrack, I kind of use it just for mostly resampling. I never really put samples on my Octatrack. The only times I ever do is if I've got a sort of vocal samples that I would like to use and launch or use within a specific performance, then I'll have it in there. So this is what I have. Let's go through the actual sounds that I recorded in. So just to let you know, the way I recorded it in is that I have a patch bay with 2 interfaces. So I have my main interface and also my A to D and D to A converter. So I've just plugged in all my instruments into the patch bay, and the patch bay in the background has got everything else connected in, and then I route it into Pro Tools. Pro Tools has a fantastic routing system. So if you go into your IO settings here, here is where you can like set out all your routing, shows you where all your routing is. It's really cool and handy to have that option there and to be accessible as well by just going to setup and IO. As I said, let's go and have a look at some of the sounds. So let's have a look at the kick. So I'm just going to solo the kick first. So it's got a really heavy sort of feeling to this kick. It's quite bold and has a really hard attack as well. Being in techno, you know, you really want that hard kick to come in. I was on the rhythm. I was just trying to figure out what to do, and there was a sample of a kick, and then I just went and started manipulating the kick myself, and then made it sound like the way I would like it to sound. And now this tom, it's really cool. Just really just in the background, comes in every once in a while to add that more percussive element to it as well. And then here are my hi-hats. I love the hi-hats out of the rhythm. It's really cool. Sticking to percussive elements, let's have a look and see what I've done with the main output of the TR8. So I have a clap in, I have a clap in there. I have a clav, and I've also got another closed hi-hat in there. The reason being I added that closed hi-hat is just to give it a bit more of a rhythmical approach to the track. As I was sort of experimenting around and just kind of felt it was right there, you know what I mean? And considering the 909 hi-hat that I've used in there and the TR8 hi-hats, they don't sound similar, so they still sit separately within the sonic output of the actual track. And then have a listen to the Monolith 32. Doesn't sound much, but it really works with the rhythmical elements of the actual track. And the Monolith 32 is one of my favorite instruments. Kind of made this sort of like acidy 303 sound out of it, which was really cool. And then I have my modular. So again, it was all about experimentation, seeing what I can develop out of it. I've got things plugged in, you know what I mean? I changed specific parameters in the actual modular synth to create these weird and wacky sounds. And for this one, it just kind of felt like I was calling out to the mothership in space or sending a signal to another planet. So all up, the track sort of sounded like this when you've got all the elements together. So that's pretty much the track. As I said, this was all done improvised. I never went and said, okay, cool, this is what the bass line's gonna sound like. All right, cool, these are all my percussive instruments. All right, cool, this is what I'm going to do with my modular. No, all I did is I put everything together, all the instruments that I wanted to use, and then just started experimenting and seeing what I can come up with. Ultimately, I tend to, as I'm performing, you know, again, using improvisational techniques, like the track is just over 11 minutes long. That's a very long track. And, you know, in electronic dance music, you want to keep the audience's attention, to keep them dancing, to keep them going. If you've got like elements going over and over and over again, it sort of tends to have that sort of boring aspect to it. So yeah, this is what the sort of track came out to be. I didn't have any sort of aspirations of how I wanted the track to be. It just came out the way it is. And I didn't really have any sort of objections about the way in which it sounded. It just sounded really good, and I loved it. And you know, as I'm performing it and recording it, I'm dancing to it. So if I'm dancing to it, that means it's, you know, I really like it and I want to work on it. So I've made all my choices. I've selected my instruments. I've sequenced it. I've, you know, got all the sounds that I want. I've opened up Pro Tools, set out all my channels, plugged everything in, press record, press play, and then off I go. And once I've done that and I'm pretty happy with it, I save it, close it, and then I'll come back to it and start editing. My editing process is a little different than my recording. I'm a little bit more focused about the track and how I want the track to travel, how long I want it to be, and how I want to fix up all the sounds. 9 times out of 10 when I'm recording, the sound doesn't just end up being that sound. I will change it, I will make it a little bit more interesting. If I feel that the sound is not really doing what I want it to do within the track, I either will take it out or edit it in a way in which to make it sound a little bit more different, to be a bit more appealing. So here are the steps I took in regards to editing and mixing the track. I've shortened the track, so originally it was recorded to about 11 minutes. I got it down just to over 7 minutes. When I'm doing my editing, I'm making sure I'm making really positive and smart choices as well. So for example, I have a filter going on with my Mother 32 and it's opening up really, really nice and slow. And then when it comes to the edit stage, I don't want it to go for that long. I just have a listen to the track and just see if specific elements sound the same and then join them together. I don't make big changes in my edits. It's just small incremental ones. The way you'd be able to control the percussion a little better and also make sure everything is just falling to a specific grid and that nothing's sort of like steering away. When I record into my DAW, I make sure the tempo is set at the same tempo that I was originally played with. So for example, my octa track was my master clock that was setting the tempo of the actual track, set at 145. And then I've set the actual DAW to 145 as well. If, say for example, you want to make some sudden changes on things, if the filter's opened up way too long and you want to jump it to somewhere else, you know, you can always make a decision like what I have, where I've just had a crossfade here, where the filter was open and then it just crossfade really quickly to a close. So here's an example. As you saw, it wasn't really too sudden. It was a little. It was concentrated because I wanted it to flow the same way it would as if I was actually using my hand on the actual filter on the Mother 32. So that's the edit here. Shorter, it's sweeter. Now it just came time to actually mixing. When it came to the kick, there are times where we find some audio engineers that make a decision of bringing in a sampled kick because, say for example, the kick on the kick drum wasn't giving them too much body, or you know, it released a little bit too quickly. The transients are a little bit too all over the place, so it'd bring something to come in. I've seen a lot of audio engineers use an 808 kick to add a little bit more breath onto the actual kick itself. For me, I was actually quite happy with my kick. I really liked the way it sounded. All I wanted to do was deconstruct it and bring it back together, just to bring specific frequencies out. I have a main kick, a mid kick, and a low kick. So my main kick is pretty much the original kick, but filtered out the lows and the highs, and then concentrated a lot in the mid-low section, just to get a little bit of that thump. So it's really about thumping of the keys, actually having a really quick transient, a really quick attack, and just having it hit the speaker. In my mids, again, as a self-explanatory, I remove a lot of the lows and the mid lows and remove a lot of the highs and just concentrate around between the mid highs and the mid lows, just so I can get a little bit more of an attack on the actual kick itself. So it's a bit more tighter, and then my low kick is pretty much what it's doing. It's just bringing a lot of breath out of the actual kick drum. So if I were to open up my EQ, I filtered out everything, set it at about 70, and just made it sound a little bit more warmer, what it is. Probably won't be able to hear it if you're not listening through this if you listen to this through your phone, it's probably not going to come through. There's just that warmth, whoomp feeling to it. Bring them all together, you get this. The integrity of the kick drum is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It has changed compared to what it sounded like prior to what it is now. It's just a little bit more cleaner in my sense. Also got a couple of dynamic choices that I made, you know, as a Fairchild. I put like, you know, a bit of a compression onto it on the main kick. Then I put a little bit of compression on the mid kick, and then I actually put this Pro limiter on it. I just wanted to bring it up and just make it sound a little bit more warmth. The toms on the rhythm, this was really interesting. I actually wanted to, I really liked the way what the rhythm was doing, but I wanted to give it a little bit more movement. My dynamic changes, and then I, you know, ended up doing a bit of EQ, and I added a reverb onto it as well, the space reverb here on Pro Tools. Great reverb. I really enjoy using that one. So this is sort of what I did to it. So I just wanted to give it a bit more space. But then I thought, well, what would sound really cool if it tapered away? I sent the sound to a bus and I put a delay onto it. Sorry, not a bus, to a auxiliary channel, and I put a delay on it. And then I got this. So I really like this element. I'm like, okay, cool, that's awesome. So even though I am using a reverb on the main channel, I actually sent it to another auxiliary channel with another reverb onto it, the Lexicon 224. All I did was I removed the dryness of the sound and just had the wet, and just played around with how much of the tail of a reverb that I want. So this was just to make it sound pretty. This is just to make it sound a little bit more reverberative. So as you can see, it just tails off really nicely, and you still got that delay that keeps going and going and going, and I'm going to stop it. And then I started to work on the percussiveness on the TR8. I just kind of played around with the TR8 percussions, right? So, you know, didn't really make that much changes. I put a compressor on it, and I put a little bit of limitation just to bring it up a little bit more, and then EQ'd it a little bit. Sounds great. However, I was kind of losing the clav and the clap a little bit. So I duplicated the channel and then separated it into 2 mono channels. And then what I did is that I used my EQ to try and try and find where the clav is sitting. So I was sitting around there, just pointed it up a little bit more, and then I went ahead and started working on my bass drum. Now, my bass line. So again, I didn't want to ruin the integrity of the bass line. I wanted to stay there. Did a little bit of compression, did a little bit of EQing, came up with this. So I made it sound a little bit more warmer than what it was. And then I thought, well, it would be really cool to add a bit of a reverb, just have it sit underneath. So we added the reverb, and a small delay as well. So it darkened it up, and it made it, and it also just brought up a bit more of its bit of the high end of the actual sound as well, so the higher frequencies. Then from there, I went and started working on the modular. Now, the modular itself sounded really great. There wasn't really not much I wanted to do to it. All I wanted to do was just make it a bit more wider, and just to bring it up a bit more. So I used limiting instead of compression because I didn't want to squash the sound. All I wanted to do was just bring it up, and then you know, making sure that no peaks are being squashed either. So this is what the modular sounded like after doing a bit of tinkering around it. Oh yes, as well, I put a reverb on it as well, which was, you know, just again made it sound a little bit more wider. I also have this really cool plugin from Native Instruments called Replica. I think it's great. It's just brings so much to a sound, just makes it sound so cool. I really wanted the modular to sound a bit more spacey like, and I started just playing around with a replica, and just to me just sounded really cool. Like I really liked the way it shaped the sound. And then the last part was the hi-hats. The reason why I didn't go straight from the TR8 percussions into the hi-hats, because the hi-hats are doing already what they're doing. So all I really needed to do was bring it up and just do a little bit of EQing as well. Okay, so this is what my hi-hat ended up sounding like. As well, I put Replica on there just to make it sound a little bit more wider, just space it out a bit. And then I have my cymbal. Cymbal was quite difficult. I didn't want it too high and I didn't want it too low. I just wanted to have it really balanced in the mix. This is sort of what it came out to be. I also put a bit of reverb on it as well, just to add a bit more breath into the tail end of the release on the cymbal. So as the cymbal opens up, it just gets larger and larger and larger. And then that's it. That's pretty much the track's finished. I've edited it, I've mixed it, you know. Now, if you have a look at my mixings page, I've done really nothing. Everything's still at Unity. The reason being I did that is because I actually routed all the sounds out of Pro Tools into the mixer, and then out of the mixer back into Pro Tools. So this is my final mix. So all my levels are set on the actual mixer itself. Any panning decisions that I've made is done on the actual mixer itself. The way I finally mix it is that I do the same thing that I did when I performed it or when I recorded it. I know what the track sounds like now. It's just a matter of me making those changes, you know, doing a little bit of filtering as well. Maybe, you know, being a little bit, you know, cheeky and doing a little bit of a performance on there as well. So it's, I kind of really wanted to perform the track again, just so it sounds a little bit more interesting. After finishing everything, it's all done. It sounds great. I've made all the decisions that I want to. I routed all my output channels out of Pro Tools into my mixer. Then I had the stereo output of the mixer, the main output of that mixer, back into Pro Tools to record it in. And I'll show you what the main element sort of looks like. Sounds like. That's the track. It's done. If you wanted to know the type of timeline that I had when I finished working on this track, I didn't really give it a specific timeline. I worked on it quite sporadically over a period of 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, but all the solid work was done over a period either during the day or when I had some spare time at night. That's the process of me recording and mixing my track. I hope you got some sort of inspiration out of it. I'm really excited to show you some more. This track will be out within the next few weeks, so look out for it. And thank you again for checking out my YouTube channel. See ya.